Our film links to other media products because in a lot of thriller films, such as Seven, the serial killer is one of the main characters. But it also links because the serial killer in Seven has a murder book where he has pictures of all the people he has killed. And we also use this to add more of a storyline. We also, like in Seven, how in the opening titles they cut back and forth to the book and moments that would be later in the film to make it more dramatic as well as foreshadowing what will come later in the film. This is something we wanted to incorporate into our opening of our film. We developed the idea of not seeing the killer, like in Psycho, you see the killer's shadow but we don't actually know who it is. We do this in our film when you can see the killer's hand turning the book and the killer's feet when it picks up the bracelet, but we never see its face and this adds suspense. We challenged the idea of other films like Disturbia because in this film the serial killer is a hard-looking male who kills. However, in our film we have used a woman because most people don't expect this as it is not the stereotype, although there have been some notable female serial killers such as Sharon Stone's character in Basic Instinct. We use very intense music like in Seven. The music makes it sound like a very twisted film, whereas in our film we have used tense parallel music to build the suspense. Overall, our film follows the conventions of most thriller films in that we have tried to create a sense of mystery, suspense and tension through not knowing who the killer is. We have challenged the conventions in that most thriller films the killer is a man killing young women, Psycho, or a woman killing men, Basic Instinct. Whereas in our film we have a female serial killer killing women. It is also very rare that a female serial killer kills for pleasure. For our location we chose a very low-key, dark and spooky alley. This is very typical for a thriller film because it is quiet and there are hardly any people there, and so it's the ideal place for a murder. For example, in films like The Blair Witch Project, the location is a rural forest. We liked this idea because it created a sense of tension and fear, whereas in films like Reservoir Dogs, they kill a lot of their victims inside where there would also be no people around. The lighting in our film is quite limited and dark. We wanted it to be this way because not only is it very typical in a thriller, but it's also what an audience looks for because it makes the scene more frightening and mysterious. In our film we have decided to represent young women as all our characters are women, and so we looked at gender. We chose this because the protagonist and the antagonist are both women. Women are normally seen as the weaker sex, for example in film like Taken, because that's a weak, vulnerable female who is kidnapped at the start of the film, and we wanted to go against the stereotype and give more of a background to the story, and make people want to understand why she has killed all these girls. Like in the film Psycho, although the killer is a man in real life, he dresses up as a woman when he kills people, because nobody likes to suspect a woman of being a murderer, and female killer is not as typical in a thriller. However, there are notable exceptions such as Sharon Stone's character in Basic Instinct. We wanted our film to show that women can be weak and vulnerable, but also that they can be the opposite and have strong and powerful presence. The first institutions that could possibly distribute our film would be Jeff Studios because they are the company that created it, and so therefore they are more likely to want to distribute it. Another way that we could distribute our film is by digital distribution, which means putting it online so that people can search for it on the internet. This is a good way of doing it because it is cheaper, not only for the audience that are going to want to watch it, but also for the producers of the film because they won't have to pay for a film reel. Smaller institutions such as BBC Films could be more likely to distribute our film because our film is low-key and so therefore isn't going to be disrupted by someone like Disney, because you would have to be quite a big company for that to happen. We also have the money for things like merchandise and for marketing the film, and so we won't make very much money because we are very low key, and so a big conglomerate like Disney is not going to be interested in distributing our film. Looking at our audience research, we asked a lot of young people such as 16 to 17-year-olds. We asked them what they thought the people should be that watches our film. We narrowed it down to ages of 15 to 25 or 26 to 40. The higher amount of people went towards the older generation, so this is who we decided to aim our film at. We also decided to choose this age group because we believe that the older people are more interested in violence and leaving people on the edge of their seats type of films, and will be more engaged into it. We decided that a film should be a 15 and over, as it does contain scenes of violence and is quite a psychological film, which means you have to be old enough to understand it, so the sophisticated plot would appeal to an older audience. I think what attracted our audience to our film was the fact that the killer was a female and killing young girls, because this challenges the conventions of other thrillers. I think this then attracts the audience because it's different to what they're used to, and they will want questions answered, such as why is she killing the girls and not men? Or why is it not a man killing women? I also think the fact that you don't see the killer's face throughout the whole opening 2 minutes draws people in, because people are going to want to find out who the murderer is, and this is what leaves people on the edge of their seats and gives a mysterious feel. Such as in the film Psycho, it is a very successful thriller, and I think the reason for this was because you never saw who the killer was until the end, and so people might have thought it was a woman, but actually it was a man that was dressing up as in disguise, and so therefore it gives it a whole different twist. I have learnt a lot about Premiere Pro whilst developing and constructing our project. We use Premiere Pro quite a lot, as this is what we had to use to edit our film. I edited a huge amount of the film, and from this piece of technology I learnt how to slow down the speed of the shot, and how to change the colour of the scene, and how to put all the videos together so the whole thing flows. A big part of Premiere Pro that I used was to cut the videos to make them shorter, as in our film we were cutting back and forth to different scenes. We also had to use the cameras, which was very interesting but difficult, because we had to work out how to hold the camera still in some scenes so it was straight, and how to use the video and also focus to make sure the image is clear and the depth of field is correct. We also used YouTube and Blogger, which I found quite interesting to use because it taught me how to upload videos to YouTube and then transfer them to Blogger. When we did our opening titles, we used the titles on Premiere Pro, but instead of having a blank background, we did some more filming and added it as our background, which linked in with the location of our film. We also used Audio Network, which was a website that we were allowed to download music from, and we had to buy it and then know how to upload it to the background of our video. Our preliminary task was very basic. To start with, our camera shots have improved a huge amount. The camera isn't so shaky in a lot of the shots, and we have used a lot more variety of shots and not just the same shot over and over again. The different shots also flow a lot more, and it fades in and out with a pattern rather than it just being completely random. The music that we used for our final film fits a lot more with all the different shots than it did with our preliminary. The beat of the song in our final film works with the movement of the victim and the murderer. The lighting in our preliminary doesn't fit with the storyline because it's meant to be mysterious and dark, but the lighting is very bright, and so this doesn't give off a scary type feel, whereas in our final film the lighting works because it is very dark and there is limited light, which makes the audience suspect that something bad is about to happen. In our preliminary, we didn't have any props. However, in our film we used a bracelet and a book, which both played a huge part in our film because they both link to the storyline, and so you have to pay close attention to them both. The location of our preliminary was definitely the right location for a thriller because it wasn't urban. The location of our preliminary was definitely the right location, wasn't the right location for our thriller because it wasn't urban enough, because of the parts of the school that we used, and because of most of it was based inside, and so we didn't get the effect that we tried to get. Whereas in our film, our location worked perfectly with the storyline, and that's what made everything else work with it. Our facial expressions and body language didn't really come into our preliminary very much, except for when the murderer hits the victim, but this isn't very convincing and so it doesn't make a very good scene. In our final film, our body language expressions didn't place a huge part, but that's because the victim had to look like they didn't know what was about to happen and like that they would be going about their daily business.